Welcome to the Cherith podcast. I am Evelyn Ngatia, your host. I am a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, a child of God, also a learning consultant focusing on secure leadership. This podcast has 3 pillars: faith, mental health, and secure leadership. I welcome you. Let's learn, let's grow, let's heal together. Let's walk together on this journey to secure leadership. Happy learning. Welcome to the Cherith podcast. I am Evelyn Ngatia, your host. And today I have a very special guest, Faith Gichanga, and we'll be unpacking how to handle the covert narcissist at work. But before we get into that, remember, subscribe, like, share, and also remember to give me feedback so that we can know how to tailor the content to suit you. So, the most dangerous narcissist at work isn't the loud one, isn't always the arrogant one, isn't always the easy to spot. It's the subtle, hidden one, the covert narcissist. And that's what we're here to unpack today. So I want you to welcome our guest, Faith Gichanga. Karibu sana, Faith.
Thank you, Evelyn.
So excited to have you on the podcast. And nice to meet you as well.
Same here.
So, about this topic, maybe first introduce yourself. I know you're a workplace psychologist,
right,
but tell us who you are, what you do, and what you are known for.
Okay. What I'm known for.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's a pleasure to be here. I have seen your work and I really loved it. I think there are some common points that we are both passionate about. So I'm happy to be here. So as you introduced me, my name is Faith Gichanga. I'm an organisational psychologist, so that deals with workplace wellness. But I'm also a counselling psychologist. That's my first love. My first love started in counselling, but then over time I specialized in workplace wellness. So workplace wellness really is about looking at systems that sometimes make us not be at our best. Maybe it's a job design, maybe it's a leadership style, right? So looking at those things and seeing how are they impacting the employee, right? The employee well-being with a view of how is that impacting productivity. So it's a win-win for both employee and employer, because for the employee, then they get to have their well-being looked into, and then from the employer, then they are able to increase productivity, get the best from their employees.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So I thought about how do we understand or unpack narcissism in the workplace? And as I was looking for a workplace psychologist, I wanted someone who had the understanding of narcissism so that we can marry those two together. And what a joy it was for me to see that you've written and you've talked about narcissism, but you're also an organizational psychologist. So help us unpack this covert, because today we're talking about the covert narcissist. What is a covert narcissist and how do they differ from the overt one?
Okay. So first of all, the word covert comes from, I think I remember when I was in high school, when I was doing French, cover in French or close is covert. So I think that word comes from there. So it means closed, it means hidden, it means all that. Then overt, open. That's what it means in French. So just to differentiate those two. And I like that you bring this conversation here because we do, I think there is quite considerable amount of conversation about narcissism, but mostly in the off work, so relationships and probably families. But these people are working somewhere, right? They are our bosses, they are our employees, they are our peers. So I like that, you have brought this conversation to the table today. So back to covert narcissists, like I said. So we have those that probably we can spot them from afar because they are boisterous, they're very grandiose. They just want to take the attention of the room, such things. So those are the open ones, right? But the hidden ones are more subtle. They use more of charm and manipulation rather than outright show of control and, all the other things that the overt narcissist will have, right? But let me give an example. Yeah. So if one person comes, so 2 narcissists, right? So one comes and says, oh, here I am, all of you look at me, okay? That is overt, that's, But another one will not use those words, but say something like, oh, no one really cares about me. No one really sees me. No one sees what I do. Now, both of them have made it about themselves. It's just that this one, now we all rush to the one who is probably saying, oh, no one cares. But, it's still attention seeking. So at the end of the day, because narcissism is about really attention seeking.
Yeah.
It's about someone with a fragile ego, but they want to cover it up in other things. So you can see that even in the covert person, the covert narcissist, there's still that. They're still seeking attention and many other things. I know that we'll discuss more, but maybe just to give that differentiation at this point.
Okay. And so it's that vulnerable one that you've talked about, the woye who wants to, elicit some kind of pity and all that. So how do you, in addition to what you've mentioned, how then what are the telltale signs that you're dealing with a covert narcissist? That could be either your leader, your direct boss. It could be your colleague, meaning we're peers. It could be your subordinate, someone who works for you. What are the telltale signs that would show you I'm dealing with a covert narcissist?
Okay. So generally, maybe there'll be just some things. For example, they never give you all the information. Okay, so maybe there's a meeting that has been called and you're supposed to attend, but either you're not given the full information so that you're well prepared, or you're told very last minute, again, so that you show up looking very confused. It will be people taking credit for your work. Okay. But now for leaders, it can also be where I favor people, like because they also lack emotional intelligence. So I favor someone, and it might not be obvious, but I know this is the person. All the maybe good projects I send them their way, not necessarily because they are good at their work, but because they provide, narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is, they make me feel good about myself, right? They adore me. So it's where, and someone who's a boss as well could pit two people against each other. They because at the end of the day, he wants you people fight for my attention. So that's also something else that a leader can do. And of course, taking credit. I think the big one is that they go into the room and take credit for work that someone, the junior, has, staff has done. Peers, it's competing with you. Evelyn, you don't even know you're competing. We are here working together, thinking we're doing this project together. But me, I'm thinking I need to have one up over Evelyn. Okay, so there's that unhealthy competition that can be. A subordinate can be passive aggressive. Okay, so because they don't outrightly want to come and say things to you, it can be like they're sabotaging you. It could just be that you have this project or report that you needed to present at somewhere by this time, and you entrusted them, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. Last minute, they're sick or just something, so they can sabotage you, or they're not taking feedback very well, or another thing that they do, they bypass you and go to your superiors for something that they'd have come to you. So those are some of the ways that covert narcissism, or even just narcissism generally, can appear at the workplace.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And I mean, the passive aggressiveness, we see it so often in the people who are reporting to us. Or we see, if it's a leader, pitting two people against each other, provoking competition and stuff like that. And this problem of covert narcissism, has it just started? Why are we talking about narcissism all of a sudden? Has it always been there? Or, how prevalent is it in the workplace?
I get that question a lot, even not just at the workplace, even in our families and our relationships. I get that question a lot. How come we're suddenly talking about narcissism? Why is it that they didn't exist? No, at the workplace, in our relationships, in our families, it existed. We just didn't have a vocabulary for it. We didn't have a word for it. And then, and to make it worse, our culture as African, the traditional, so for example, if it's a narcissistic dad, no, he's just a traditional father. He's a traditional husband. He's strict. He doesn't listen to maybe women, or he doesn't, you get, so we looked at it as that. And even at the workplace, and we must say Gen Zs are coming to destroy some structures that we had put in place. There's a way we looked at our bosses as if they're giving us life. Really, there was no that space of, I can have a conversation with this person. So, and then we thought our employers are doing us favors by giving us jobs, not realizing that they also need us. We're bringing value into the office. So it's just that the way the traditional office looked like, the way the traditional family looked like, these things look like it's a normal part of that structure. But now we can look and say, no, my boss is someone just like me. I'd like him to respect me, and I'd like to respect him or her, by the way. Maybe both. So it's not that it's increased. It's just that we have a vocabulary for it and we have awareness. But also maybe a little bit at the workplace may have increased because when I remember back in the day when our parents would hold a job for 30 years, and that was the ideal. Like, you start somewhere, you go there until you retire, climb the ranks. But now we're living in a very competitive workplace. I want to move, I'm doing better, I'm learning. So that competition also is a breeding ground for narcissism to thrive. So organizations, the most competitive ones, have the tendency to have more narcissists in there.
I see. You mentioned something interesting about Gen Z. And maybe just to dig deeper into that, how are they managing with how are they handling narcissism? Do you find that they're more vocal about it, about mental health? What's your view about this Gen Z guys?
They are so vocal, and they're disturbing managers and superiors at the workplace because they truly, they're not taking things that I know in my younger years I took as an employee. They're able to say, no, this is not right. Okay, I couldn't do that. I just took it. I remember when I was 22, I used to go home and cry every day. Even I remember my dad telling me, you don't have to go and work there. And honestly, things I could have just probably told someone and they could have, because I remember being bullied and I was small and, and I remember being bullied. But, and still, again, I didn't even resign because also that was an option, right? But we were told, no, you have to stick through it. But I find that Gen Zs, as much as we say they don't have the capability to stay in somewhere much, but I think what I'm also, because I also interact with them a lot, is when it's not serving them. They have that we didn't have. When it's not serving them, they will leave and they will go. We were taught different. We were taught, no, stick there. It doesn't matter. You have something holding on to. So that's one. Two, it's that I think this was very evident during the Maandamano, where they were forming let me call it an organization, but not in the sense like a system where there was no hierarchy. Okay. And that's one thing they're very, they don't like this, who is what layer up. No, we are working together. Okay. So that also removes the power play because we've seen people, again, narcissists love power and they use it to abuse people. So when we have more flat structures, even more and more, we're seeing organizations preferring flat structures. It lessens that. It lessens that power struggle between people working in an organization. So those are some of the things. And then they have the awareness. They have the awareness more.
They have more awareness than we did. That's interesting. And that's a whole topic for another day. I'd really love to unpack Gen Z and mental health and how their view is, but that's a subject for another day. But back to covert narcissism. What's the motive of the covert narcissist? What are they hoping to achieve by doing all this passive aggression, competitions and all this? What's the motive?
So one of the thing about them, like I said, they have fragile ego. They have very fragile ego. And one motive is that no one finds out that they have a fragile motive. I mean, the fragile ego, right? So I'll do anything that I need to do to cover this up, right? So that's one. Two, just attention seeking and need for admiration. Okay. So as long as you're admiring me and telling me these good things, we're good. As long as you're competing and then they're very averse to criticism. With them, there's nothing like positive criticism. There is no criticism. Anything that is just telling them that they missed a mark, it destroys them. So they will try to be away from anyone or any system that brings that out of them. But it's just that. We call it narcissistic supply. Just keep stroking that ego of theirs and they're good with you. So that's the motive. But then there are also those who I think from the background they've been hurt. And it's, and I look at cartoons very differently. There's this one of Powerpuff Girls and this guy called Mojo Jojo who wants to take over the world, and his aim is to take over the world, right? So they have this aim of being the super best in that thing, whatever it is, right? And they would do any other thing. I mean, it's okay to reach for the stars, but when you're saying, and I will step on whoever I need to step on, I will do whatever I need to do to be there. So for them, it's feeling like once I get there, I'll get the recognition, because their self-importance and self-confidence is not innate. It comes from environment. So when I become that person, then people will look at me different. They will adore me and they will see that I'm important and valuable.
I see. Interesting. Okay. They actually believe they are so important.
Yes.
That the world is not recognizing their importance.
No, that's the thing. They know they are not.
Oh, they know they are not.
So they try every day. And this is the thing. Even when they are, because some of them, quite a number of them are very successful.
Yeah.
But they do, because it doesn't come from within.
Yeah.
I need Evelyn every day to tell me I'm beautiful, I am good at what I do. By myself, if I'm locked somewhere by myself, I will start self-depreciating because it's not innate. Innately, I don't think I'm anything. I don't think I'm valuable.
Okay.
I need the world to affirm me.
Yeah. Okay. So now that's the scenario. So we have covert narcissists in the office and we know it is an issue.
Yeah.
How then do you go about escalating? I mean, if you're dealing with a covert narcissist who's harming you, maybe they're sabotaging your projects or whatever they do, how do you report to HR? If their abuse is so hidden, it is so under the radar, what do you even use? What language do you use?
And that's a very good question. In and outside work, because that's the biggest challenge victims of narcissistic abuse have.
Yeah.
First of all, they even themselves are doubting. They're like, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe, right? So first of all, let's start from there. That the person themselves, especially when there's no physical hurt or even that physical hurt. Sometimes you explain for it because you did this, you see, and I'm so sorry if you haven't done it. So there's a way they mess up with you. So we're also looking at people who are very not only vulnerable, but unable to quite put into words what they're feeling. So that is a challenge by itself, right? So one of the things I say is, and as we're talking about this, I'm thinking all the systems that need to be aware of narcissists. Because as we're talking about office, we're also thinking also like this happens again in courts, right?
Yes.
When people are not aware of narcissism, it's very easy for them to be swayed in the direction because narcissists are charming. They're very charming and they seem like they know what they're saying. Okay, so but let's talk about the workplace now. It's important that our HR people to be aware of that, like narcissism exists and maybe what it looks like.
Yeah.
Now, that is something that is out of control of the employee. As an employee, it's this thing you're told, always when you're communicating with people, write it on email. Like have a trail, right? Have a trail because it's very easy. You talk to someone and they deny. Oh, that's also another sign that you're dealing with a narcissist, where they deny completely a conversation that you had with them.
Yeah.
Okay? So have it on trail. That's one thing. And then now with a trail, you can show a pattern. So instead of going to say how the feeling, because most of the time we are going with the feeling, right?
Yeah.
But here, what you can show is the pattern of behavior. And then, over and above that, put an impact. So, talk in the language the organization wants to hear. What's the impact on your productivity? So, for example, right? So, let's say like what? A meeting. Right? And severally, this person is not giving you full information.
Yeah.
So you say, this is the third time that I'm being told very last minute that there's a meeting. Now, because of that, I'm not able to prepare well, and I'm not able to produce the results, something like that. Like speak in a language that the organization, so it's not,
right.
I mean, we should care about people.
Yeah.
because my feeling should be enough. Like, this is how I feel. Like, that should be enough.
Yeah.
But really, unfortunately, that's not the case. So it's important to show the impact of that feeling, that pattern of behavior, how it's making me feel, but over and above that, the impact it's having on the work. Or it could even be like, now I don't feel free, or I feel anxious to work with this person, right? That's a language that I would imagine HR or an employer would listen to, just to see that it's actually impacting not just this person, but the quality of the work.
Interesting. So that's HR. So how do you report this to your direct leader, supervisor, or do you go to HR? What would you?
So this is the thing. It really just takes someone who understands. So I don't think there's an either or. I guess you can start with your direct, the person you report to.
Yeah.
But then if it's not handled, then you can escalate. But what if that person you report to is the person who is, is the one who is doing this to you? So I think that depends on, I guess, organization per organization. But I just hope that we can start having this conversation at the workplace and people are able to recognize that narcissism exists, and regardless of how productive, because again, very productive people, they're very smart, they do that. So regardless of how productive they are at work, what's the impact in the organization culture? So I can't say this or that.
Okay.
I think it's just maybe who you it might actually be even someone else or a peer, like someone who, first of all, can validate I think that's important.
What you're
it's the
going through,
person who you know can validate what, yes.
Okay. And what if it's actually the CEO in this case, who you have seen?
We hope that the CEO, because the CEO is a person and maybe an office, that there are systems that can check him. Okay? It's not a CEO who has like 100% power over everything. So we are looking, that's part of why we have workplace wellness and organizational psychologists, where we're saying, can we have a system that checks people regardless of the power that they have? So hopefully it's one of those organizations that the CEO doesn't have all the say, at least. But if they're not, the other thing I'll say is, even in relationship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a workplace, instead of telling people, this is how you can cope with this. Yes, you can for a little while, but you never win against a narcissist. So eventually you might need to plan your exit strategy.
Wow. So how, now if HR is, very key to this conversation, how do we bring them, how do we empower them? Or how should HR be looking at this covert narcissism? How do they get empowered around even the knowledge, getting the knowledge that, there's this issue that they need to deal with, which is causing a toxic workplace?
So first of all, I feel for HRs, because they should, that shouldn't be part of what they're dealing with. Let them there for processes and policies and administration, right? That actually falls in the role of a workplace well-being expert, right? But we don't have those, for many of organizations, we don't have that. So it's a HR. I think, it's just training. It can be part of the professional development. It can be some of those things that then they're being taught outside of the curriculum of being a HR. I know they have a lot of, CPD courses, and that can be highly recommend. That becomes one of the conversations that they also have. And it's not just narcissism. There are other toxic traits and toxic behavior that I feel would be helpful for HR staff to have. I'll also say I have some of my colleagues who have done organizational psychology but are practicing in the HR office. And I say those ones now are very well placed.
Right.
Yes. Because now they are dealing with the human aspect, the human behavior, and then the processes. So that works well. So there are people who are doing both, and they're placed in HR offices, yes.
Okay. So now you as a workplace psychologist, and I know you've touched on it a little bit. So what would be your role in handling this covert narcissism in a workplace that you find yourself in?
Okay. So again, not necessarily to look at the person, but look at the system and what aspects of the system is, number one, promoting this. Like I said, a very competitive culture will breed narcissism, okay? Because it's like, oh, we're here to win. I mean, you see this, especially when I watch legal series. See how those people like they're just willing to do anything to just
Get ahead.
get
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So such an environment, and I'll tell you, I have so many clients who are lawyers. Toxicity at their workplace is a common thing in the legal world because of that. So a competitive environment breeds that level of toxicity.
Yeah.
So for me, is to look at the systems, okay? And we look at who are we promoting. Is it because that person is loud and visible, right? But what are their values? What is the impact on the culture?
Okay.
How is their behavior? So we also need to not just promote people based on, oh yeah, he's the guy I see around. Oh, he's the one who helps. No, it cannot be only because of that.
Right.
Okay? And that's a very big problem, is that narcissism is rewarded at the workplace.
Yeah.
It is rewarded.
That is so true.
Yes, because like I said, these people put themselves out there. And that's what any organization, a leader wants, is, yeah, this is a potential. Number two, they're willing to take risks that most other people are not. Okay? And then just the fact that they're in your face. So we tend to reward. So it's just that one of the things that I can do is that. But number two, also awareness. And this, like I said, this what you're doing is just very amazing, right? So creating awareness so that even me as a victim, I can pick it out. A lot of times, like we said, victims, you don't realize, you doubt yourself. You're like, no, it must be, maybe, or is it, could it be? Did anyone else see? No. So just creating awareness and validating, yes, that what you're feeling, what you're seeing is actually real, and there's a name to it, and there are patterns to that. So those are some of the things. And then, of course, to support people who have been victims of narcissistic abuse. It takes a while. Just because you remove the narcissist out of a victim's life, it takes a while before the person can heal and reset back. So also just offering support for people who have not felt that kind of safety at the workplace.
There was someone who mentioned something about when you've talked about rewarding, that they are rewarded. Narcissists are usually rewarded by the system. And even, so one of the followers actually talked about the interview stage. That even at the interview stage, they're the ones who are also rewarded at the interview stage because they appear confident and they know what they're talking about. Well, seemingly, right? Until you hire them and then you realize they may not know exactly or be as competent as they appear to be.
That is so true. By the way, it starts from there.
Yeah.
It starts from there. It's like, oh, did you see that guy is charming? Or lady, charming, knows, they are very able to be charming, talk through things that even though they don't understand. There's a way confidence, people at the workplace equate confidence to competence. It really isn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily the case.
So how would we pick that out at the interview stage? Just out of curiosity. Are there systems that we can use?
So I know a number of organizations, but this they do for leadership roles.
Okay.
Other than just the interview and what you're telling me, they give you like a case study. Because now that one you have to apply. That one you have to show, the work, your understanding of it, your critical thinking.
Yeah.
So I think that has helped but I've only seen that in leadership roles where you have to make a presentation. But it's not just a presentation. It's like a problem you are given and you need to solve it.
Yeah.
So, and that will require the same skills that you will apply at the workplace.
Yeah.
So for junior roles, like I said, I think just if we have a HR or HR people who are aware, or even just leadership in an organization, you can pick. So one of the things I say about narcissists is once you're aware,
Yeah.
You can tell them from miles away.
That is so true.
So if someone is aware, then they can be able to pick apart some of the things that this person is saying,
Yeah.
or just body language, the grandiose nature.
Yeah.
So they can be able to pick that up as long as they have the awareness.
I like that. I think awareness is where we really need to start because, like you say, once you see narcissism, you cannot unsee it.
That's true.
You'll actually be able to pick that out. And even if you're on the panel at the interview stage, you can easily be the voice of, hey, I think this and this and this, A, B, C, D, you know. But speaking about leadership, how what does good leadership actually look like for those organizations that are saying we have zero tolerance for narcissism or for toxicity in the workplace? What does that leadership look like?
So it's an interesting question you ask, because a lot of people want to say that, and a lot of organizations want to say that, but they draw the line at where they need to look inwards. So are you ready to, like you said, that CEO?
Yeah.
Are you ready for someone to come and be open and say, this your leadership? Because one of the things that really makes a place toxic is leadership style sometimes.
Yeah.
You're authoritarian. So are you ready for people to tell you that this has this impact? Are you ready to hear that, when you send emails at 2 a.m. and expect someone to reply, that's not fair. It's part of toxicity. So they need to be willing to, it's not just who is doing, like it's very easy to say who out there is doing and what do we need to do? How do we need to discipline them, or it's a system. The system, it starts from the system. So are you willing for your system to be, like I said, picked apart, and people say, this affects me this way, and you are willing to do something about it?
Okay. And so to that CEO maybe who is wondering whether they actually have this problem in their workplace, what should they do? Where should they start? And I know we have a whole other episode that will unpack really what the role of a workplace psychologist is in detail, because I think that's really required. It's something that that is emerging. It's something that, hasn't really picked up, or people haven't really appreciated the role of a workplace psychologist, but it's so important. And I know we'll get into that. But for that CEO who's watching this episode and wondering, do I have this problem? Do I have covert narcissists, or generally, do I have narcissists in the team? Are they derailing? Are they sabotaging? Are they, impacting the productivity? What would you tell them? What should they do? Where should they start?
So hopefully they have feedback systems. Now the problem again with feedback systems, I've had people say, yes, they say it's anonymous, but I will be, like, there's retaliation. So again, like I said, you really need to be able to be willing to look inwards and say, for whatever it takes. So one of it is feedback. I know an organization whose CEO said the feedback only comes to him. And that was quite something, because he'd been hearing that, he thought the HR is also involved in toxicity. And so he did a radical thing and said, okay, and he told the employees, like, you know what? So there's this, I'm the one, and he came, I remember I was in that, he's like, I have this key. That box, I'm the only one with the key, right? So every feedback that comes will come straight and direct to me. So that was, that's not something CEO should be doing. But he, I think that's the only way for him to, because he felt like there's a layer that was filtering what the people were saying. So it's open communications. Number two, when we're doing evaluation, we have taken that evaluation is the people superior to you. But no, let's adopt the 360. Anyone, even the people junior to you, can evaluate you. So those are some of the things. I think a lot of it will take from feedback. Hearing, because I don't, initially, because he might not see, especially the CEO from where he's sitting, right? But also start looking at trends like absenteeism. There are things, culture, how are people working together, be that CEO who walks around, not micromanage, but be once in a while, go have lunch with, these people, just have a relationship with them. Not always, but like there is something you will pick that you'd not have picked if you sit at your office. So be a man of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. It can't be always, but once in a while.
Yeah.
And then that's why workplace well-being experts are here. Yeah. So just get someone who's an expert in that area.
Yeah.
And they will help you set up the systems
Absolutely.
or see what they can do to help you in that.
Okay. I like that. And just for the record, I know feedback systems do work because I was in an organization where I experienced that bullying. And actually that feedback mechanism is what brought out the issue. And actually a lot of people in the department had actually faced that bullying and toxicity. And the person was able to be held to account. So I can confirm that indeed, at least I know one organization where the feedback system does work and there's an accountability system for that. But in terms of time, I think we've run out of time. So I don't know if there's one last thought or something you want to leave our audience with that we haven't talked about today.
I mean, I think we've covered pretty much a lot of it, but I think it's just to continue having this conversation.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about narcissists at home and in our families, they're there at the workplace. So let's just continue having this conversation. I think it's a very good conversation that you have begun.
Thank you. I'm hoping it can create awareness, even in the workplace. We create awareness around this problem because it's a huge. What is it? It's a huge contributor to toxic workplaces.
Absolutely.
Not the only one, but it's a big contributor. So thank you so much, Faith. Thank you for honoring my invite. I'm very happy that you could share your insights with our audience today so they know how to handle covert narcissists at work and what to deal. So thank you so much for your insights. How can people reach you if they want to know more about workplace psychology, organization psychology, or what you do personally, or the insights you share?
Right.
Where can they
so
reach you?
I'm on social media. LinkedIn, it's my name, Faith Gichanga. MPSI, maybe just in case there's another Faith Gichanga. So I've added MPSI, that's Masters in Psychology. Then on Instagram, I think that's also there where I'm a bit active. It's psychologistfaith.ke. I think those two you can find me in those two.
Yeah.
Or my email. The easiest is fgishanga@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you so much. And to our audience, Faith is a renowned workplace psychologist. If you know her and if you follow her, you'll get such good insights. But we thank you for taking the time to unpack that for us. And we can't wait to unpack the next episode also with you. So, guys, look out. Remember, subscribe, like, share, but also give feedback. Give us feedback. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to see more of? Etc. So thank you, Faith. Thank you to our audience, and see you at the next episode. Bye.